Thank you. When I cut a deal with Chair Collins or Senator Graham or any of my Republican colleagues, there may be parts of it I do not like or they do not like, but we know what we agreed to and passed into law is something we can count on. And that is absolutely essential to getting the 60 votes to make this appropriations process work. But what we are here today talking about is one party rescinding funding provided with 60 votes with just a simple majority. And if that becomes the new normal for how this body operates, that is going to make our appropriations bills extremely hard to negotiate. So as we consider this package, this committee deserves to understand the whole picture of this administration's plans before making a decision on this request. So if this package passes, do you intend to send more rescission requests to Congress?
Senator, that's up to the president. It's certainly an option. It's an option that I've stated publicly that we will strongly consider, but that's up to the president. And it's, we will take that on a week-by-week basis. But there is more, honestly, than $9.4 billion that we've identified. There's $163 billion in fiscal year 26 that we have identified for less spending than
So these
prior
were bills
budgets.
that this committee approved on a bipartisan basis. How many packages are you talking about, and what are they?
Again, we have no decisions on those have been made, but we do want to see how successful this effort is. When I went through the confirmation process, you specifically were reminding me of the Impoundment Control Act's process to be here and to bring forth rescissions if we find waste, fraud, and abuse, and to give Congress an opportunity to vote on those. And that's what we're here to do. And again, I think you're also making a point about process. From Gerald Ford to Bill Clinton, it was totally normal for the appropriations process to consider
Correct, and I will just
rescissions.
remind all of us that the Appropriations Committee worked on those in a bipartisan way. They were not partisan packages that were sent up. So what I'm hearing you answer me is that there will be more. You don't know how many more, but there will be more. So this committee and this Congress could spend a lot of time going forward on requests for cuts if this package passes. Director Vought, when asked about this request, you have said that no matter how Congress acts on this request, impoundment is still, quote, on the table. And in an acknowledgement of how unpopular your cuts to bipartisan priorities are, you even publicly said you may well try to do an end run around Congress by requesting rescissions in the last 45 days of the fiscal year, and then pretending that even if Congress fails to approve them, you can rescind those funds anyway. So let me tell you, that is not how the law works. The president does not have a line item veto, much less a retroactive line item veto. Your notion of this pocket rescission defies common sense and, by the way, the plain text of the law. Director Vought, will you commit to this committee that you will not attempt to do an end run around Congress with this so-called pocket rescission, something members on both sides of this dais have made clear is outright illegal?
Senator, there's a lot of mischaracterizations into my previous comments. I would just say that we believe that we have, under the law, numerous options with regard to how to achieve savings, including rescissions that are timed at the end of the fiscal year. General Accounting Office has articulated that earlier
right?
in the life of the
This
Impoundment
should be
Control
a
Act.
yes or no, and what I hear you is all kinds of word salad to make sure that you are letting us know that you intend to do things that are outside the intent of the law. And it has also been reported that you are considering sending Congress a massive deferral package under the ICA in an attempt to run out the clock and avoid legal scrutiny of this administration's illegal freeze before ultimately impounding the funds at the end of the fiscal year. Can you commit to this committee that there will be no deferral package?
We certainly are aware of the deferral provisions in the Impoundment Control Act. There are specific statutory requirements there that if we are in a situation where funds may meet those definitions, they are certainly on the table. But again, we have made no decisions. The president has not made any decisions with regard to those different tools that exist. And so I'm here to talk about one package. There's been one
understand that, but
decision on one package,
I-
$9.4 billion.
Director Vought, I just want to be clear to all of us about what's going on here. You are actually telling Congress, in total disregard for Congress's Article I powers, that you and the President will just impound or rescind funds that you don't agree with on your own. And Congress, I will say to all of my committees, should not stand that from this president or any president in the future. And I think that's really important as we consider this. Quickly, Director Vought, to justify the $8.3 billion you propose in foreign assistance, you've argued that these funds were used by the Biden administration for woke programs or things not aligned to Trump priorities. That's not how this works. Whatever the Biden administration may or may not have done, most of what you are proposing, as has been talked about here, to rescind is Congress provided this administration in the FY25 CR, the same CR that President Trump signed into law in March. And while Congress has provided instructions for target countries and sectors and purposes, this administration has flexibility to determine how best to meet those bipartisan objectives. So you are waving around a tiny cherry-picked list of past initiatives funded by those accounts. It's irrelevant when the simple fact that you and this administration now determine how those funds are being provided by Congress and are specifically put to use, and yet conveniently you have not spelled out for this committee and the public what you plan to cut if this package passes, even if you ask us to vote on it. So will you tell us specifically, and I'm asking you two questions, tell us specifically which global health programs, malaria, TB, polio, funding for Gavi, are you going to cut?
Again, we have two main reductions in global health.
Can you tell us specifically
We have
on any of those
$500
today?
million for family planning and $400 million to PEPFAR.
But you're not going to tell us which programs. Okay. Will you tell us specifically where the Philippines, Pacific Islands, Jordan, you're planning to undermine American interests?
Of course not. We've been very clear in all of the administration's priorities that all of our commitments with regard to Jordan and Egypt are maintained. Again, we have looked at ways.
My time is out, but I assume you're unwilling to share which humanitarian crisis this administration plans to walk away with, which is what we would be voting on, and that is critical information.
Senator, there's no difference between how we've constructed the rescissions based on how you all, when you send the original bills up in terms of the allotment account. And I just would like to say this because it's my first time with the Appropriations Committee. I don't think there's a more important principle than the notion of the congressional appropriations power in ensuring that federal agencies cannot spend without an appropriation from Congress. I think that is paramount. It's linked with the Anti-Deficiency Act, which is one of the most important statutes that we are the ones that work on at OMB. And so I think that the extent to which that is understood properly for the record is something that I want to make sure I had an opportunity to say.
Thank you. Senator